So we are in a series right now about Joseph. We've been talking for several weeks about this young man, and we've been talking about the fact that in Joseph's life, God had a plan, God made some promises, and between the time that God made promises to him and the time that everything God promised was revealed was this process. I want to start today by talking to you about when things at work go badly. Joseph, if you will remember, has been sold by his brothers to a band of traders. They threw him in a pit, and they pulled him out of the pit, and about the time he thought things were getting better because he was coming out of the pit, he got sold for 20 pieces of silver to a bunch of Ishmaelites that are going to take him to Egypt. He gets to Egypt, and he hasn't been with the caravan very long, and he gets sold again. He goes to work for a man named Potiphar. Potiphar buys him. He is a slave. Joseph is now his property. Joseph has gone from a pit to a caravan to being purchased by Potiphar. And in chapter 39 of Genesis, there are a couple of verses that will say the most amazing things to us about this part of Joseph's life. First, it says this in verse 2. Let me read 2 through 4 to you. The Lord was with Joseph, and he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant. Let's look at some thoughts here. 3 key thoughts. The Lord was with Joseph. There's a great truth here about God. That no matter what you're going through today, the Lord is with you. He is not backing out because the process has gotten tough. He doesn't leave you. He doesn't forsake you. He's closer than a brother. He stays with you in the process. Then it says that he was prosperous. Prosperous. That's interesting, isn't it? Here's a man who is a slave, and the word prosperous is going to be attached to his name as he is being a slave. Sold twice, the Lord is with him, and now it says that he prospered. I think it's really important that we get a good understanding of how God sees prosperity and how that applies to our lives, and what is the original language trying to tell us here around this word prosper. The original word here in the Hebrew, when you look at the word for prosper, it means a successful venture. It is deliberately contrasted to failure, and it also means to advance and to make progress. The prosperity of God carries with it the thought of a journey, that you are moving ahead and that you are making progress. Joseph prospered, and as he did, he moved ahead. He moved ahead, and he moved ahead into the plan that God had for him. The third thing that I want to point out of these couple of verses is that Potiphar saw the blessing of God on Joseph, and he responded to it. Not only is the blessing of God just on Joseph, but it is so obvious that Potiphar sees it. Is your work catching attention because of its excellence or because it's done with mediocrity? Are you the person who leads with excellence, or are you the person who leads with complaints? You should be a blessing at your place of employment. He succeeded. The Lord blessed him because he made choices and decisions to serve as unto the Lord. Your choices always have an impact. Your decisions always have an impact. Is the place where you work in line for a blessing just because you're there? Joseph is going to prosper, and then he's going to have a bad day at work anyway. And I want you to notice that prosperity doesn't mean there's no problems in your life. I want you to notice that even though he was blessed, there are going to be problems. Even though the word success is attributed to Joseph, he's going to have some problems. Even though the word prosper is attributed to Joseph, he is going to have some problems. Just because you're blessed, successful, and prosperous does not mean you're not going to have difficulty. Enter a new character into our story, and I just title her Mrs. Potiphar. We don't know her name, but this is Potiphar's wife. Mrs. Potiphar is a lady who has not quite mastered the art of subtle conversation. In verse 7, it says this, "After a while, his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, 'Come to bed with me.'" Wow. And again, this young man is going to do the right thing. Verse 8, he refused her. "With me in charge," he told her, "my master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns, he has entrusted to my care. No one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How could I then do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" And though she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her or even be with her. So the first thing that's going to happen here is he's going to answer her correctly. He's not only going to say the right thing, but he's going to do the right thing. He's going to honor the authority in his life. First of all, he's going to honor Potiphar. And then as he continues to honor authority, he recognizes that this is a sin and that this sin would be a violation against God. He refused to be with her or even to be around her. These are good practical steps that he's engaging to avoid temptation. He refused her. He chose not to be around her, and he ran away from her. And even though he's doing all the right things, her advances don't stop. He does the right thing. She keeps doing the wrong thing. His character is being maligned. It's being assaulted. But God hasn't gone any place. He's standing right there. He showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. So the warden put Joseph in charge of all those held in the prison and made him responsible for all that was done there. The warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. Are you kidding me? Success as a slave and now success as a prisoner who has been lied about. The Lord was with Joseph. The warden puts him in charge. He has success. He prospers. This time in a prison. The Lord's with him. He's in prison, but his character's intact. I want to close my time with you today by sharing 3 different lessons about your character. We've talked about having a bad day at work. I also want to talk to you about your character. Strength of character is always tested by resistance. The second thing about character is this. When we're successful, we are the most vulnerable to temptation. Success has an interesting effect in our life. It can cause us to drop our guard. And the last thing I want to say to you about character is this. When handling difficulty, the best way is through. It amazes me how many people disengage from the process because they have difficulty at work. It's amazing to me how many conversations I've had with people who quit on God because they didn't get the promotion. How many people quit on God because they can't find the job? How many people get angry at God and frustrated with God and quit on God because something at work happens and they don't like it? They quit on God. If God really loved me, he'd be blessing me. It's entirely possible to have tough days at work. And when you do have tough days at work and things aren't going the way you want them to go, you need to remember that the Lord is with you and you can make it. It amazes me how many people decide that they're going to check out on God, how many are going to disengage from the process when somebody says something untrue about them, when their character is assaulted. It amazes me how many people are willing to quit on God because of an unfair comment or an unfair story or somebody lied about you and someone else listened to it as though it was a fact. Someone says something unkind or untrue and people disengage. Has your character been attacked? Are things being said about you that aren't true? Friend, you can make it. You can survive that. You can get through that. Joseph did, so can you. The Lord is with you. He'll give you success. He'll prosper you. And that prosper means that he's going to move you step by step by step closer to the realization of the plan that he has for you. You can make it through this thing. You can make it. Bow your heads with me, please.